Okay, you could.
Hi, welcome everyone. Today is September 25th, and today is the community meeting. And we have the opportunity to talk to our special guest, Chao Pan, who's community lead in China, as well as Pawel Grajewski, who is our head of keepers. So we'll be getting to ask them some interesting questions about their exciting jobs and backgrounds. So please think about those as we move along here. We're super excited because the San Francisco Blockchain Week is coming up, and we'll be having an active presence at ETH San Francisco, where many of our devs will be, including Powell, in fact, and we'll be, of course, giving our DAI.js workshop there, as well as enabling hackers the opportunity to run some bounties and come up with some creative ideas about Maker. And then, of course, DevCon is coming up shortly after that. We're super excited to be involved in the Status Crypto Life Hackathon. You'll see more details to come out around that if you're planning on going to DevCon and maybe applying to be a hacker there at Status. Also, if you're a part of the community and you don't have a ticket yet to DevCon, one of our fixers over there in Prague is actually looking for some DevCon volunteers. So if you are interested in volunteering for the event, that could also be an opportunity of having some sort of engagement. But yeah, I'll kick it back to Rich.
Did they mention what kind of volunteers they're looking for? Did they mention any of the tasks that are being expected?
Yeah. It seems to be pretty operational, but I can forward over a sort of survey or questionnaire type form to help figure out what people would want to do.
Maybe we'll post something to subreddit then if people are interested in getting involved.
Yeah.
All right. I was involved with no real life events in the last week. Everything was online. So let's talk about some of the interesting partnerships that occurred recently. We have a relationship with something called the Ink Protocol, which is something that I find personally interesting. It's there's a website called Listia, which has been around for the last 10 years. It's an online market, or a marketplace sort of like along the lines of eBay or Amazon. And they did a pivot to crypto-based transactions a year or two ago, I believe. And they've just begun supporting DAI. And one of the reasons why I'm excited about this is frequently in the space, we have a tendency to forget about real world use cases. So every time that we see somebody who's actually adding the opportunity for people to transact and DAI is exciting to me. So there's a link on our subreddit to additional details to a blog post about the Ink Protocol partnership. The next one I wanted to talk about is another thing that I think frequently gets too little attention in our space. It falls into one of those categories of kind of boring crypto that I think is the most important crypto. And Gilded Finance is doing some really cool things with allowing people to keep track of the transactions and payments that they send back and forth, allow them to organize and submit invoices to vendors. And it also has sort of applications around payroll as well, which is huge for the space. So Gilded Finance, we have another interesting article and a demo, a link to a demo on the subreddit that people should check out. But if you're in the habit of actually using crypto to buy things, you've probably experienced the headache of trying to figure out what you bought and when and who that crypto went to. It's an enormous pain. And Gilded is trying to fix some of those problems. So it's worth checking out and possibly supporting them if anybody here is actually using crypto, like I said, in a real world situation. It's super handy. So check out Gilded Finance and have a look at the way that they've implemented DAI into their system. They're also creating something that I find really intriguing, where they're partnering with Wired to sort of abstract away obviously the fiat to crypto transition. So there's an on-ramp, off-ramp, but they're allowing people to send an invoice and have that invoice, send an invoice in cash and have that invoice turn up as crypto to the receiver transparently, and vice versa. So you can send crypto to somebody and then have that person actually receive fiat through wire integration, which is amazing. So we're getting closer to being able to use crypto for things that are useful, which is always nice to see. Obviously, the big news this week is the sale of Maker to A16Z, which was a major event. We got a ton of very interesting commentary in the various social medias. There's a great thread in the subreddit as well where Rune addressed a lot of the concerns and questions and reasons why this is great for Maker and everybody in the ecosystem. So I encourage people to check that out. If you have any questions, please add them to the thread or hit us up in this chat or in any one of our various social media endpoints, and then we'll address them. I'm coming up with yet another FAQ, sort of along the lines of what we did with the stability fee raise and the DAI savings rate and the other major events in the system in the last few months. So I'm aggregating questions and making sure that they get answered, so that we'll post those publicly again for people to have a look at. I think that might be it for me and partnerships and online type activities. So Jess, if you want to pick up the reins again and then maybe see who we should talk to first.
Totally. Yeah, Chao, how are you doing?
Yeah, doing great. So yeah, I'll just give a quick intro probably.
Awesome.
Sure. Yeah, my name is Chao. I lead the Chinese community here in China. And also I do some economic research by writing some analytical and theoretical articles. I joined Maker about 1 year ago. It's has been a very exciting journey.
Cool. Yeah. So what's it been like this past year for you?
Yeah, it's been great. Like to see how to grow the market in China. It's been very exciting. And yeah, and somewhat challenging, but lots of fun.
Definitely.
Yeah, I frequently try and imagine what that'd be like. You have a big job ahead of you. I think onboarding China is probably a huge mandate. So, how do you sort of prioritize your efforts when you're
yeah? So, sure. The things we do in China. So most of it is community building. So we have a 3,500 subscribers on our WeChat account, which is a medium equivalent in China. And also have several WeChat group. It's very active and engaging users. We have this kind of high power user of the very loyal users as like the foundation for us. And also the most part is content driven. So I rewrite the articles we have that to Chinese to better fit the Chinese audience. And also I write some original like analytical articles that sometimes got featured by the blockchain media. And also the third part is by partnerships. So we partner with some key players here in China, Ethereum ecospace, that give us the exposure and awareness around the general public here.
Yeah, that you raised sort of another interesting point where we have these communities. It's a global organization. It's globally applicable, I guess, and so we have communities all over the world, and frequently they're sort of insular, I guess, based on geopolitical or language barriers. So, is part of your job to basically be the translator between these sort of the WeChat groups and the other local meetups and the rest of the ecosystem to make sure that information goes back and forth? Is that kind of what you're up to?
Yeah, that's a big part of my job.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know if I have a fully formed question here, but I'm kind of interested, like what goes on in the WeChat groups? Like what do people talk about? What are they interested in?
Oh, so we have actually different tier of WeChat groups. So we have like for the user one to answer some operational questions. So for the technical one, actually people ask all sorts of questions. They're talking about the economic theory and also very technical, like including going to the code size about how like the Maker system.
And it's kind of your responsibility
also has so kind of the customer support, like going everywhere and to kind of the firefighter to kind of answer these questions. But it's been fun. Like people ask very interesting questions.
How do people primarily engage with DAI in China, with the ecosystem? Are they looking for stability? Are they looking to open CDPs? What's their primary interest?
Yeah, I think it depends on like the segmentation of the users. So for the institutional users, I found that they are actually used to leverage a lot. Like they open CDP and to kind of withdraw DAI as liquidity. And also for the regular users, some of them they bought DAI because they don't risk up USDT, etc. And also for and most of so if we talk about the user side, most of the users who actually use DAI actually are more advanced users. And it's kind of course it has a similarity in US, but especially in China, to be able to use DAI, you have to actually understand the blockchain, the basic technology behind the blockchain, and you need to read English and etc. So that can be the filter for the customer, for the user side. Yeah, that is like the basic landscape. And also there are some economic researchers that they are now they probably don't have DAI, but they like the mechanism or the theories of DAI, so they have been very vocal about us and to talk about it.
Yeah, we've seen that in other locations as well, where there's a lot of academic interest, which I find fascinating too.
Exactly.
So as a logic problem. So do you find that is it a challenge to get people to engage with the concept of a stable coin? Do people find that compelling, or do you find that the market is generally more interested in speculation, or are people interested in stability or safe harbors?
Yeah, it's quite interesting because the stablecoin has been very extremely popular topic since like in the past 1 month or 2 months. So I think it's even more than what it is in US, because I think it has to do because we're in China, like RMB as currency, and in contrasting with, because the most of the stablecoin are pegged to US dollar, so people would think that it's a kind of like a currency that drives people's attention. Also, people think that stablecoin is the kind of new investment opportunity or whatever. They are trying to find a new things that they can focus on. So it has been very popular and people. So I think in the past month, I've been invited to speak at like dozens of events, more than 20 events, both online and offline. So people ask various questions about MakerDAO and the stablecoin in general. So people are very excited and are very interested in stablecoin. But I have to say that, but to educate them from being interested and to actually use the product, there is a process to educate them. And I've been trying various ways, like to explain it in text, and also make some very like intro videos and make some video to teach people, like to educate them. Also, currently the dashboard is a little bit hard for people to use, but I think with our upcoming UI and also people it will be easier for them to onboard.
Yeah, I imagine the hurdle using their existing UI is hard for even English speakers that understand crypto. So as a second language.
Yeah, but some of them find it's very it's an interesting process because it's a very geeky way, so they like it. And also developers in China, it's kind of fun to interact with it. And also they say that because there's an arbitrage opportunity, so that if it's too easy, then there will be less arbitrage opportunity. Other people will find it. So, but yeah, it's kind of
So have there been any interesting events recently that you've been to that are worth talking about? Were you guys at Consensus this year?
No, we didn't go to Consensus. But I went to the Ethereum Industry Summit in Hong Kong. I did a presentation over there, and that was good. And also, we held a MakerDAO Shanghai meetup workshop. So 200 people. We invited some other projects come along, and including AMP, who create the Easy CDP. So and also OTC Maker is a company we partner with here in China. So they gave a lecture on DAI for developers. So yeah, that one it was also great.
Well, it's amazing. So it sounds like there's a lot going on. 200 people at the Maker event is great. That's pretty exciting.
Mm-hmm.
So what are the plans coming up for the next couple of weeks or a couple of months? Is there anything big on the roadmap?
Yeah, basically, most of the it's gonna be event. So in the next month, it's gonna be a national holiday, like 1 week. So not much things to do roll out. But we're going to keep. Also, we're actually actively looking for a business development people to join the Maker team, kind of to expand, and also so to get more get DAI to get listed on more exchanges here, and also some integration into the wallet. We have been talk about, and also there are some ERC20 wallet already integrated DAI, like that dashboard. So that's gonna be our focus in the coming month. Also, and of course, that more content.
That's interesting. So it's something that I've been increasingly interested in, are wallets and UX and how DAI interacts with that. So what's the primary wallet in China? What do people use for crypto?
Yeah, it is. It's called M Token, and we partner with us. So M Token is actually the largest ERC20 wallet globally. So
I just installed the version 2 a couple of days ago. It's really nice. I like it. So that's good to know.
Good product.
All right, cool. So we're coming up 20 minutes after the hour. Was there any other thoughts or things that you wanted to leave us with before we moved on, or anything interesting happening? I know I'm putting you on the spot here.
I think everything is quite exciting, and China is a huge market to explore. So just for those who want to to help to build a community in China, or for those audience are listening, just come to reach me, or you just search MakerDAO on WeChat, and we can talk about it. So
Chao. Oh, go ahead, Mariano.
I have a question. Regarding the workshop, something that I'm very interested in, because I want to make a workshop here in Argentina. Was it about DAI GS, or what was about the workshop?
Okay, so the workshop. So the last one we had is 3 parts. We as Maker, we gave 3 presentations in the workshop. The first is intro to Maker and DAI, which I made to get people a general understanding of the mechanism of the DAI. And the second part is how to open a CDP. It's like to people to get their hands dirty, to understand interact with the developer. And the third part is the DAI for developers. Is tell about the developing tools for the people, etc. So that's the things we did.
Awesome. Thanks, Chao.
No worries.
Cool. That was amazing. Jess, who do we have coming up next?
Yeah, thanks so much, Chao. And next we have Pawel, our head of keepers.
Hello, everybody.
Hey, man. I guess this is a running theme for the entire meeting. I'm getting everybody to explain to me exactly how I'm supposed to be pronouncing their name. So is it Pawel or Pawel? You have to clear this up once and for all.
It's Pawel.
Pawel with a V, right? Pawel.
Yeah, it's with the V, yeah.
I knew it. All right, Pawel. So let's get back on schedule then. So tell us about keepers. What have you been up to?
Right, so we've been doing that for over a year now. And the scope of our team is basically to both help the community to understand what keepers are and how can you become a keeper, as well as provide the community with some reference software which they can either just download and try to run in order to become a keeper, or maybe in order to use it as a base for them to be able to build something on top of that. So basically, we're trying to popularize the idea of being a keeper because we think it's cool. It's cool to be a keeper for many different reasons. One of them is basically you're helping to make the entire Maker platform more stable this way. The other reason is, of course, that you can make some really good money on it. And one more nice thing about keepers is that, in contrary to for example, operating a feed, which kind of requires you to be whitelisted, requires you to be approved by the Maker governance mechanism, everybody can become a keeper. We don't even know how many keepers we actually do have. They're somewhere there on the blockchain. They're completely anonymous or quite anonymous, and everybody can join that pack. So it's open. It's totally open.
When we talk about keepers at Maker, though, we tend to use that as an all-encompassing term. We have different types of keepers in the system, right? So we have market-making keepers, we have bite keepers, we have other ones. What are the different types that we have? Which one are you talking about specifically?
Yeah, so like the two main types listed in the white paper is like the first group is the whole group, which you can call liquidation keepers. So these are like, for example, the bite keeper you mentioned, or the arbitrage keeper. So all the bots that take part in liquidations. The other part are of course market making keepers. This is something that requires more sophisticated economic knowledge, I would say, in order to be able to operate that properly. But I don't think this list will be that restricted, because we can already see some very nice idea for more like far-fetched ideas for keepers. For example, during the ETH Berlin hackathon, which took place, I don't know, like 2 weeks ago, a group of developers came up with a great idea of a CDP liquidator, which is also some kind of a keeper, right? It's a bot which found its way to the Maker platform, to the Maker ecosystem somehow. So I wouldn't just so definitely more keeper types will come in the future, and I don't think we're able to envisage all the possible types right now. But in terms of what's operating and what we've been seeing operating in the wild, it's definitely liquidation keepers and market making keepers.
Cool. That's interesting. It's something that I'm glad that you're on the call talking about this, because we haven't discussed keepers too clearly, or at least canonically in the system, where there's still some confusion, and frequently people think that it's a special class of actors or a restricted group of people in the ecosystem. And it's important to remind people that the code is open, it's in our GitHub repo, and anybody is welcome to fork it and then improve it for their own use, and start competing for opportunities in the ecosystem. When I think that we've seen, maybe you can speak to this, Pawel, we've seen some really interesting transactions come through with people sort of biting risky CDPs and liquidating them, and then attempting to sell them on the open market. And we've seen some really interesting transactions. I know that I've looked at a few, and it's taken me a while to puzzle out exactly what people have been up to, because they're very sophisticated. Have you seen something? You've seen things like that, right?
Yeah, we've been actually performing some quite an interesting research regarding that recent weeks, and we're gonna definitely publish that once it's done. But yeah, you're perfectly right. There are like many weird types of different transactions which we can spot. Some of them actually originate from the tools we have provided to the community. For example, there's a tool called TX Manager, which allows to combine multiple independent Ethereum transactions into one transaction. So it's very convenient, for example, when you want to buy a CDP and then liquidate it immediately, or when you want to do atomic arbitrage. So for example, buy some collateral on a cheaper price and then sell it immediately, and just be sure that your transaction will either revert or you end up with some profit. But we also spotted many other patterns in historical transactions which do not originate from the tools that we have provided. So it's very interesting actually that people are coming up with like their own contract, their own custom-made contracts, which, for example, serialize a few different steps in order to be able to, for example, liquidate a CDP sooner that their competitors will be able to do. So yeah, that's one of the reasons I think this space is really interesting, because it creates these kinds of opportunities. And the thing you said about software, that anybody can take it and fork it and improve on it. It's not even necessary to use the software we are providing. It's all in the blockchain, right? You can basically do it and make these calls in any way you want to, and definitely we've seen people doing that.
Yes, it's a good signal. I think it shows that there's sophisticated players in the ecosystem searching for opportunities to profit, or to seek revenue, which is really, it's cool to see that there's this this sort of, I guess, this aftermarket of people looking for ways to improve and or benefit from the system, and they're actually doing things without any particular guidance or engagement from us, which I think is a really healthy thing to see. It's very encouraging. One of the things that I wanted to ask you about, though, is do we have, I don't know, I'm not going to mention his name, but there's one person on the internet who doesn't think that stablecoins are a real good idea. And I think that we can probably guess who that is. And one of his major complaints is that in order for Maker to work, there's a series of bots, and because we rely on bots, it's not a real financial system. And that argument is foolish on the face of it. But do we have a sense of what the size of the ecosystem is that we have for keepers that are interacting with arbitrage opportunities or liquidation opportunities? Do we have any idea how many people are doing that, or is it we just have to look at the chain and hope and work back from there?
Yeah, we did make some research on it, and I think it really depends on the level of sophistication. When it comes to like ordinary liquidations, I think that I would say it's like hundreds of different Ethereum addresses. It's hard to tell into how many actual people or entities that translates to, but in terms of addresses, I think it's like a few hundred of them. Right. You can clearly see that as soon as the sophistication level goes up, there are many less participants. So, for example, the most sophisticated methods are there only like inhabited by, I don't know, maybe like 10 players. And it looks similar in the case of market making activities. I think there is only a few entities doing that, because that for example requires much higher capital involvement, and it puts you with some inventory risk as well. So this is something for much bigger players. But we do have a few entities which I know do that.
It's fascinating. I remember when I was first getting involved with MakerDAO before I got hired, I was cruising through the GitHub repos, and I discovered that, and I thought, oh, this is interesting. I'm just going to fire up a bunch of bots, and then I'll just start shaving off 0.5% on arbitrage, and I'll get rich immediately. But it was probably a bit easier back then. I think that, like, speaking to your point, it's far more difficult now that people have discovered that there's opportunities here. Sophisticated players are getting in the market, and they're doing things that only very clever people can do, which is good. It's great, but kind of pushes out the noobs, I think. Do you have any? What's the plans for the keepers going forward? What do you guys have on your roadmap?
Yeah, so like the most important thing on the roadmap is the transition from the current liquidation mechanism to the auctions mechanism that will happen once we deploy multi-collateral DAI to mainnet. So the goal of our team is, similarly, we've done that for the existing liquidation mechanism. We have provided a reference piece of software. We want to do the same thing for the auction-based approach as well. So the goal is to have a reference bot which will be able to participate in auctions. It will be a bit more difficult that what the current liquidation bots have to do, because like this sequential patterns of transactions will not be that simple. For example, in order to start a collateral auction at 2 or 3 more steps, it is possible that like 2 or 3 steps have to be done. And similar it is with other types of auctions as well. But we're gonna provide a piece of software which will be able to do that. And one of the design principles we decided upon is that this piece of software will have pluggable so-called bidding models or pricing models. So, for example, if you want to participate in auctions for a specific type of collateral, you can either use a reference model which will provide, or you can build your own one. This model basically tells the auction bot how high should it be willing to bid, and how much gas should it be willing to spend on these bids. So, and these two are completely independent, and they will communicate in nice, like, Unix way. So it will be easy to build such models on your own as well.
It sort of opens up an interesting topic, though. Do we have clarity? Are we prepared to start talking about what the auction model is going to look like, what the mechanisms are there, or is that still under development?
No, the contract source code has been actually published recently. So all the flows are already available. They can be discovered. There is also like some very simple preliminary version of that piece of software I've been talking about, which is called Auction Keeper in our GitHub repo. But that's not something that you can just take and run. It's not ready yet. It will be by the time of.
Can you give us a brief overview of what the auction mechanism looks like, how it works for liquidations?
Yeah, sure. So there are three basic types of auctions, which are called flip auctions, flap auctions, and flop auctions.
Of course.
Yeah, everything Maker has to have a nice name. So flip auction is collateral auction. So this is the auction that collateral seized from liquidated CDPs ends up on. And people basically bid in DAI for that collateral in order to cover bad debt. And as long as this type of auction is a bit more complicated than the two other ones because it reverses at some point. So there is some threshold, and if people keep bidding for collateral, and so people keep bidding for collateral, and as long as they bid a value which is equal to that threshold, the subsequent bids reduce the amount of collateral they're actually willing to get, and the remaining collateral will be returned to the original CDP owner. So that's a flip auction. The other two types of auctions, flap and flop, are for selling surplus for MKR, DAI surplus, which can come from stability fee, or I think it can only come from stability fee, and bad debt auctions, flop auctions, which are meant to cover bad debt in case the collateral auction hasn't actually managed to cover. And this is the type of auction that causes MKR dilution.
That's interesting. And these auction models, is the primary focus here just the most accurate price discovery that we can achieve, or is it? So it must be price discovery, and the trade-off here is liquidity. So it's going to take longer for us to sort of just redistribute the assets that have been seized, but we can guarantee that everybody's getting a better or more fair price. Is that the idea?
Yeah, exactly. And one more idea behind it is that we will not be relying on price feeds anymore for the liquidation process, which is what is taking place currently. I mean, it's not such a big problem for ETH, right? Because it's difficult to price assets in general, but it's still fairly easy to price ETH. It's still fairly easy to tell what the price of ETH is. But in case of like less liquid collateral, it might not be the case anymore. So basically, a liquidation mechanism which depends on price feeds wouldn't scale that well. So that's one of the reasons we decided to switch to auctions as well.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing the UX that we put around these things, and whether sort of like the way that we do with liquidations now, there's still an opportunity for manual interaction with the system, as opposed to, or whether sophisticated bots will eventually take it over. But I'm gonna have to think about this price discovery thing. That's a really interesting point. So what else is happening in the world of keepers? Was there anything else any other thoughts that you wanted to leave us with, or anything big coming up on your roadmap that you wanted to talk about?
I think the main focus at the moment is actually finishing the auction keeper, because there isn't that much time left, and we definitely want to be ready. We definitely want it to be ready by the time of the mainnet MCD launch. So yeah, so I would say it's priority number one. And
will people have the opportunity to play with that keeper on Kovan before it goes live?
Yeah, that's our goal. That's our goal.
Mariano, do you want to read your question, or do you want me to read it?
Sure. Hi, Pawel. I have one question. Do we have some sort of data or something, I don't know, in which we can know the total revenue that keepers made up to now?
Yeah, we do have some analysis. I mean, it should be fairly easy to calculate. I mean, it is fairly easy to calculate in terms of when it comes to the liquidation keepers, because basically anybody can see how much collateral was liquidated and what the price was at that point in time. It's definitely more difficult to calculate that for the market making keepers, because like the way they operate isn't that open. I mean, you could try following the ones that operate in decentralized exchanges, because these orders, I mean, if it's an on-chain exchange, then you can definitely find these orders. If it's an off-chain decentralized exchange, you could still like build some kind of an archive of past orders and collect information about past trades as well, and try to correlate that somehow and estimate profit. But this is getting much more difficult, and it's getting even more difficult when it comes to centralized exchanges. And there are definitely market makers which operate on them as well, and which trade DAI on centralized exchanges. So when it comes to liquidation keepers, I think there was a rough estimate given by somebody in a Medium article recently, which was about 400,000 to 600,000 during the recent period when the price of ETH was falling down. I think that may be a bit overestimated actually, but that's more or less the figures we're talking about.
Okay.
You also have to take into account that like these profit opportunities related to liquidations are very sporadic. So probably like 95% of all the possible profit that was to be made could only be made during like, I don't know, 1 or 2 weeks in total. But the system has been live for like almost a year now. So you have to keep waiting with either your software or manually, probably with your software, if you want to make some really decent money on it for a very long time. And just that when the price of ETH falls down sharply, then these opportunities actually appear.
Okay, and I guess that another thing that I was thinking the other day is like, do we have a direct relationship between prices falling down and keepers' activity, right? I mean, in a bull market, should be keepers like lowering the activity a lot, right?
Yeah. There is definitely this type of correlation, at least when it comes to keepers which handle liquidations. And it's usually not only, so, I mean, it's usually not enough for the price of ETH to fall, but it has to fall like so either people don't have time to prepare and top up their CDPs, or they just kind of give up and just don't want to do that.
Cool. Thanks.
All right, thanks for that, Pawel. That was really interesting. It's one of the things I love about these community meetings is we end up rediscovering large aspects of the ecosystem that some of us tend to forget about. So it's nice to be reminded that we have all this activity in the keepers world, and all this activity in China that we don't really talk about very much. So thanks for coming. All right, Jess, who's up next?
I think we're good to go. We've had our 2 fantastic guests.
Well, I think Mariano wanted to talk a bit about things that are happening in Argentina.
Oh,
Mariano
amazing.
Di Pietrano.
Di Pietrantonio.
See, I got it. That's perfect. I got it right.
That's okay. It's okay, Rich. As I was telling you, a lot of people call me Di Pietra. It's my nickname, so you can go ahead and call me Di Pietra too. What is happening in Argentina? We are preparing with Mariano the Colombia Hackathon. It will be a pretty short one because it will be only 17 hours of hacking. So we are thinking with Mariano to prepare challenges around DAI and not so much around CDPs because they are you need a bit more of time to work on CDPs. And another thing that I wanted to ask you, Rich, is about the physical DAI tokens, because I want to do something similar in Bogota with the DAPI hour, something which I think is pretty cool. But I have to find out how. I think I heard you say something that they can scan a QR code and they will be having DAIs on their preferred wallet or something like that.
Yeah, I'll get you all set up with the admin panels and all the rest, but for anybody who's not familiar, and they're probably sick of me talking about it, but I'm going to do it again really fast. So we did this really cool project where we have a physical DAI token. That DAI token has an NFC tag on it for Androids for near field communication, and a QR code for iPhones so that you can scan the QR code. And the whole point of the mechanism is onboarding people in a way that doesn't cost money, which we think is a very compelling thing to do in the crypto space. So, what happens is somebody scans this QR code, or they put their phone up against the NFC tag. Takes them to an URL. That URL detects their phone capabilities, and if they don't have a wallet, it prompts them to install one. If they do have a wallet, it deep links into the wallet to the DApp browser. It loads up a specific page with a unique URL, and that unique URL loads up a display, a UI that has something really cool on it, which is a single button. But that single button is cool because it is a meta transaction. So it's a transaction where we have a delegator or bouncer contract sitting somewhere else, and the end user just clicks the button and they receive DAI in their local wallet without having to pay a transaction fee. So they don't need to have any Ether in their wallet.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to know, because I guess that as an onboarding activity, it is great. Okay, great.
Yeah, at ETH Berlin, we discovered sort of anecdotally that about 40% of the world's top crypto influencers don't have a wallet on their phone, and the ones that do don't have any Ether. So I can only imagine what things are like in Bogota. So we're working on some other additional plans to make sort of this. We have the onboarding ramp done, but we're trying to get the offboarding ramp going. And that means that we can get DAI into someone's wallet for free, but allowing them to make a transaction immediately requires them to have Ether again, which is a huge pain. I think that the community in general is sort of waking up to the fact we go through the cycles in crypto where everybody thinks we have a great idea and we go with that for about 6 months, and then we all realize sort of around the same time that was a real dumb idea and we need to change everything in crypto, and then we go ahead again.
Yeah,
I think transaction fees, people are starting to realize, are a real bummer. We need to do something about that. So.
True, totally true. I don't have any other news besides that. And I wanted to hear Mariano about Mexico.
Sure. So, before we transfer over, Mariano, hit me up, and then we'll get you set up with plans to do the tokens in Bogota.
Sure. Thanks, Rich.
All right, Mariano Conti, I'd love to hear about the hackathon, because we just did something with UNICEF, which I'm enormously excited about. I think that it's good for us all to be reminded that we're here to do some good with crypto. And so if you want to tell us how that went, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. So I was here Saturday and Sunday. So this was the first hackathon that UNICEF hosted. It's a branch of UNICEF called the UNICEF Innovation Fund. So they have, I think, at least $16 million to give away to projects that use technologies in interesting ways, including blockchain, of course. And this hackathon was mainly the main theme was refugees, and they had three different ideas on how they could help. One was identity, other was payments, and the other was tokens. And pretty much every single project chose identity. And I thought that was very interesting. Out of, I believe, 12 projects that participated, 6 ended up showing their work, and 3 won. And they all dealt with refugee identity either on their phones, which could be complicated, but most of them having some sort of digital passport on the blockchain when crossing borders, or migrant children being able to almost tag themselves on different refugee locations whenever they crossed, let's say that they reached a certain place, to also getting data from newborns born in refugee camps into some sort of record for doctors to be able to have accessible. So there were plenty of different ideas, and Maker, with our goal of serving the underserved, we actually are pretty keen on participating with this. And this was the first hackathon that UNICEF hosted. There were some issues that usually happens. They plan to do a lot more, so hopefully we'll be there with them. And
yeah, I think that's part of our long-term collaboration with UNICEF is, and one of the things that I really like about what they're trying to do is frequently with hackathons, it's sort of one and done. So somebody submits a code, they win a prize, and then rarely do those repos ever see a second commit. And
yeah,
we'll just walk to the next challenge. And one of the things that UNICEF is doing is creating sort of this milestone long-term series of events. So they do a hackathon, they set some of the base primitives, or they come up with some good ideas, and then the next hackathon, people are tasked to sort of build on some of the ideas from the previous hackathon. So there's an actual life cycle for the code here, which is really intriguing.
Yeah, the event was all in Spanish, which was kind of a different thing from, for example, the ETH Global events, which wherever they're hosted, they're in English. But I'm still hoping that there's going to be video, at least of the winning presentations. And our prices, Maker prices, were very generous. We gave out 6,000 DAI, spread between 3,000 to first prize, 2,000 and 1,000. And I actually got to give the first prize. I gave it to them on the spot. They had a wallet, and I transferred 3,000 DAI on the spot. The other 2 did not, as you said very well, from the ETH Berlin hackathon. So I'm going to be giving that, I don't know, shortly.
That's a great use case, though. So being able to actually use crypto on the spot is it's kind of an eye opener. We tend to forget exactly how many UX steps we generally have to run through. So that was great.
That was one of my my main things. I wanted to give everybody their prices there. Only managed to do 1 of 3, but we're improving. And I want to say that there were representatives as well from the Airbus Foundation, and they are extremely excited with the collaboration that we're doing.
Yeah, I think that we're going to have some really good announcements coming soon, and we're doing everything we can to sort of foster the relationship with UNICEF. We love the concept of seeing what crypto can do, at least with some of the initiatives that they have going. I'm still trying to wrap my head around what you said earlier, though, because this is fascinating to me. So in the Western or the more developed worlds, ecosystems or economies, we tend to think, okay, crypto, that means that, we can just send money to whoever we like. Hooray, that's the end of the story. But it's fascinating that they would have focused on identity first. And that's going to take I think that's worth reflection. So we might want to think about that a bit, because especially if you're crossing a lot of borders under the less than perfect circumstances, keeping track of your passport is a pretty tricky thing to do. So identity is something that maybe we don't pay enough attention to.
Yeah, I think it was very interesting.
If I can add, actually, identity has become very popular here in China. Like, people talk about it, and they think that's huge things.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, I'm gonna make a note of that, and that's something maybe we can think about for further hackathon challenges as well. And maybe, yeah, there's a lot to think about there. So that's great. Thanks for the update, Mariano. Was there talk of when the next UNICEF hackathon might be, or is that still to be determined?
I think it's still to be determined, but the woman that handles the UNICEF Innovation Fund, she's Argentinian as well. So we hit it off pretty well, talking about home and all that. She lives in New York, works out of the UN, right? So she's going to keep us posted.
Yeah, sounds great. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the next one. It'd be really interesting to see how they sort of build upon previous successes. That's great.
Yeah.
All right, I think that might be it for anything that I wanted to talk about. Jess, was there anything else on your agenda?
No, I think we're good. It's been a very extensive meeting with a lot of awesome content. Thanks, you guys.
Yeah, thanks, Chao Pan. It's great to talk to you for the first time ever. So that was interesting. Thanks to the two Mariano.
Thank you for having me.
And Pawel for the insight into Keepers. That was useful. Thanks a lot. All right, see everyone next week for the community call. But if you're interested in governance, and I know that a lot of interesting things have happened, and we might be talking about the A16Z sale a bit more depth on Thursday. So if you want to join the governance call, please check your calendars or check Reddit for an agenda. I think that's it.
Awesome. Thanks, you guys. Thanks.
All right, everybody. Bye.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.